I welcome you to yet another lesson, but as usual, we shall start with the corrections to the activities or the activity that we had. In particular, these are now corrections to activity 424. So the first question here is, why was Angola and Mozambique not suitable for large-scale white settlement? And the solutions here are due to presence of tropical diseases, then due to harsh tropical climate. Since we're having the aspect of climate here, we can as well accept issues like that area had unreliable rainfall, that area was hot, or the climate was not conducive. Number two, apart from Angola and Mozambique, same as besides Angola and Mozambique, name any other two African countries that were permanently occupied by European settlers. From the lesson, the previous lesson, lesson 23, I know you have this. There are quite a number of them. 1, Kenya. 2, South Africa. 3, Zimbabwe. 4, Namibia. Next question. How was Lord Baron Delamere helpful to white settlers in Kenya? Many issues. 1, he introduced dairy farming in Kenya. Then he encouraged the white settlers to cultivate land. Then he was the leader of the white settlers in Kenya. Next question. How did the coming of white settlers affect the Kikuyu community? So effects, like we said, effects could be quite many of them and cuts across many fields. The Kikuyu were displaced. Yes, the white settlers grabbed the Kikuyu's land, same as the Kikuyu lost their land. The Kikuyu were not allowed to grow cash crops, same as the Kikuyu were refused from growing cash crops. Next question is, why were Kenyans not allowed to grow cash crops? The white settlers feared competition for market. So fear for market, same as white settlers fear to lose market. White settlers fear to compete with the Africans for market. The white settlers wanted to control African resistance. White settlers in South Africa. So today's lesson, we want to address or to understand white settlers in South Africa. In the previous lesson, we understood that white settlers had the intention of farming. All the white settlers here in Africa were farmers. All the European settlers here were farmers. Their basic aim was to farm. That's why they always looked for fertile areas of land for farming. So let's see. First aspect, the Dutch, can call them the Boers, were the first European settlers to settle in Cape Colony or in South Africa. These Dutch, we shall constantly be calling them Boers because the word Boers in Dutch means farmers. So these farmers from Dutch settled in South Africa, and we shall constantly be referring to them as Boers. They came from Netherlands or Holland. So the Boers or the Dutch came from Netherlands or Holland. The word Boers, like I said earlier on, means farmers in the language of people come from Holland. Then that's the language of the Dutch or the Dutch. They were led by Jan van Riebeeck. So Jan van Riebeeck was the person who led the white settlers in South Africa, who led the Boers in South Africa. Let's see how this person looked like. This person looked like that. So that's the picture, the photo of Lord Jan van Riebeeck. Why the Dutch settled in Cape Colony? Why do you think this person settled in Cape Colony? In the first place, we said their major intention of coming was to grow crops, so they were farmers. So the issues as to why they settled there are attached to farming. 1, presence of fertile soil. So Cape Colony had fertile soil, and 2, presence of good climate. So those were the major aspects. The arrival of the British at the Cape Colony led to the Great Trek. Now, what's this Great Trek that we're driving towards? Let's see this. The Great Trek. Here we're having a sketch map of South Africa. Now, see this Cape Colony. So what we say they settled at the Cape Colony, but as they settled at the Cape Colony, they moved, as those arrows are showing, they moved. Why were they moving towards? They're moving towards the northwards. Or you can say they're moving towards the interior of South Africa. And how are they moving? They're moving in a massive way. So the massive movement of these Boers from the Cape Colony we're seeing here, northwards, or from the Cape Colony, the interior is what we're going to refer to as the Great Trek. Let's see the words meaning this. The Great Trek was the massive movement of Boers from Cape Colony to the interior of South Africa. Same as the Great Trek was the northward movement of the Boers or the Dutch from Cape Colony. So that northward movement is what we're referring to as the Great Trek. Look at those people there. It's a group of people, so it's massive, moving. And like what I've said, they were moving from Cape Colony to the interior of South Africa, or it was a northward movement from Cape Colony. Causes of the Great Trek. We're going to come across quite many causes of the Great Trek, but from the onset, I want us to remember that the Great Trek never existed or never occurred, not until the British settled at the Cape Colony, and the controversies, the misconceptions, misunderstandings between the Boers and the British led to the Great Trek. So constantly we shall see interventions by the British leading to the Great Trek. Let's keep on. Introduction of English as an official language. At the Cape, prior to the coming of British, they were using Dutch. But when the British came, they put aside Dutch and English was declared an official language. This angered the Dutch so much, and they end up moving northwards, that was calling the Great Trek. Abolition of slave trade. The Dutch had enjoyed making Africans work so much. So when they abolished slave trade, they never saw reason for being there. They had to quit or to move some other areas where they would be free to use slaves. Introduction of British currency. These people had enjoyed their own currency. They had enjoyed barter system. But here the British came introducing their currency, the British currency, which it angered the Boers so much, so they had to move away from the Cape Colony, resulting to the Great Trek. Introduction of new laws, or introduction of the British laws, like payment of rental fees, then compensation of freed slaves. This equally angered the Boers, and they end up moving to the interior of South Africa, leaving the Cape Colony where they had lived for long earlier on. Overtaxation by the British. The British introduced taxes, and indeed they were overtaxing the Boers. These Boers were bosses, but now here they were all supposed to be taxed. So this equally did not make them feel good. They end up moving away. The Boers wanted to protect their independence. They had been independent at the Cape Colony. The coming of the British made them to be subordinates. They were tired of that degree of insubordination, so they end up moving to the interior where they would become independent politically. The Boers wanted to preserve their culture. Their culture had been overshadowed by the British culture. So to further have their culture that they cherished so much, they had to move away from the British. The Boers were looking for fertile soil for growing crops. Yes, the other land at the Cape had become too small. These were growing crops like on modern scale or on a large scale. So the land at the Cape had become small. They wanted areas where they would enjoy large tracts of land, and it would only be found in the interior. That's one of the reasons why they had to migrate. They wanted to set up their own administration in the interior, so they had to move northwards. They were running away from overpopulation in the Cape Colony. Now let's see the effects of the Great Trek. What were the effects? After this part moved, what were the outcomes? What were the effects? We're going to realize that the effects were both positive and negative to the Boers and the black people who were in the interior. So we're going to mix them up here, but let's have the capacity to clearly show whether it was the blacks scoring or the whites. It led to formation of new states, and these new states were talking about the Transvaal and the Orange Free States. Do you think this was positive to the British or to the Boers or the black people? Certainly, this was a score to the Boers. It led to discovery of minerals like gold at Witwatersrand and diamonds at Kimberley. So, what do you think this is? Is this a score to the Boers or a score to the Africans? The Africans had lived there. Their diamond was in the ground and their gold was there. But when these Boers came to the interior, they think that they had discovered it there. They think that it wasn't there. No, it was there. The black people were there having it. So it's these Boers that start excavating our minerals, our resources. It led to introduction of new culture, or led to introduction of Boer culture or Dutch culture in the interior of South Africa. It led to inter-tribal wars between Africans and the Dutch, and we are saying these inter-tribal wars led to a lot of deaths. Africans lost their land to the Boers. It led to displacement of Africans. It expanded areas of white settlement in South Africa. It led to development of African, that's the language. Intermarriages and combining of these communities, the Boers or the Dutch and the Bantu languages, led to formation of Afrikaan. Afrikaan is the language that is spoken in South Africa. Problems faced by the Boers during the Great Trek. When these were moving, like we saw, that massive movement, they came across quite very many problems. They were faced with quite many problems, like we're going to see in here. They suffered from fatigue. The fatigue came as a result of walking long distances. Attacks from tropical diseases. It was equally a challenge for them. Attacks from hostile tribes. Remember, the interior of Africa had Africans there. They could not just look on. People looking like butterflies coming and taking over their lands. That resist. So we're saying attacks from hostile tribes was one of the challenges that they faced. Harsh climate conditions. At the Cape Colony, like we had it in topic 1, that Cape Colony has another type of climate. It has Mediterranean climate, but in the interior, they were facing another type of climate. So it was a challenge to them. Shortage of food and water. As they were moving, they had some food with them. But since it was a massive movement, since these were many, over time, food became small and famine set in. Death from battles. There were two types of battles that we want to discuss here. Battles between the Boers and the Africans, then also battles between the Boers and the British. Battles between the British and the Boers were very fatal because both groups had guns. The Boers had guns, equally the British had guns. When you grow and go to other levels of education, you're going to be introduced to Anglo-Boer wars. Those were wars between the British and the Boers. So we're saying deaths were also a problem to the Boers during the Great Trek. So that marks the end of this talk. From this, we shall still proceed with the things within South Africa. And I want to say, live positively. Do not do what's not supposed to be done in this era of COVID. Do the needful. Have a mask with you if there is need for, and stay safe. Bye for now. We'll meet in the next lesson.